Shopify is a global commerce platform that helps you sell at every stage of your business and sell more with less effort thanks to the Shopify Magic, your AI-powered all-star. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/redcircle, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/redcircle now to grow your business, no matter what stage you're in. Shopify.com/redcircle.
With so many options, why choose Arizona State University?
For me, the only online option was ASU because of the quality. Their faculty was really involved with their students and care about your personal journey. The dedication to my personal development from my professors, that's been extremely valuable to me.
Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online. That's a degree better. Explore more than 300 undergraduate, graduate, and certificate programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
This weekend, only at Macy's, it's our lowest prices of spring. How low? Diamond rings, pendants, and earrings, only $399, originally $1,500. Ninja blenders, now $89.99. And $395 men's designer suits, only $99.99. So if you're wondering why you should shop Macy's lowest prices sale, well, the name pretty much says it all. It's our lowest prices for one weekend only. Starts tomorrow at Macy's. Savings off already reduced prices. Exclusions apply.
You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have a right to an attorney prior to or during any question. If you can't afford one, the court will appoint one for you. Do you understand your rights?
When the wolf is at your door, you running's over, that's for sure. He already knows all about you. Cut you down, no matter by you. Now you better walk the line. Real life, real
Warning, this episode of Real Life, Real Crime, the podcast, may contain descriptions of acts of violence or that of a sexual nature and should be for people that are 18 years or older. Heed my warning, people. I do not get the facts of these cases off of the internet or from some television show. The facts I'm retelling you were presented to me by the victims of the crimes or the perpetrators who committed the crimes against the victims. My descriptions of the crime scenes, what I saw with my own two eyes. If you're going to get offended, please turn this podcast off now. Thank you. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Real Life, Real Crime, the podcast. As always, I'm your host, Woody Overton. And today, continuing Scorched, the state versus Scott Peterson, part 1,057,000,000. I don't know how long it is. I know it's long, but it is interesting, and y'all keep requesting it and wondering where it's at. So we're almost done, y'all. I think we're on the last couple people that are actually testifying in the death penalty phase. So bear with me. We should be done this week or next. And I love and appreciate each and every one of y'all. Thank you so much for liking and listening and sharing and sticking with us all these years. And the cop stories are coming back as soon as we get done with Scorched. So let's get down to the business at hand. And we're going back to court in the death penalty phase for Scott Peterson. He's already been found guilty. And the date is December 6, 2004. And the defense is talking to witnesses or examining witnesses. And we're going back, and our attorney is Pat Harris, and the witness is Miss Kelly Jean Beckton. So let's see if we can get this going. Harris. Good morning, Kelly. You're the next in line in the Latham family. Is that right? Beckton. That's right. Harris. So Abraham, we just met, is your brother? Beckton. He is. Lead is your older sister? Beckton. Yep. Harris. Okay, we kind of covered the background. They're going to have the opportunities to see Scott, see the Peterson family, so I won't go into that again. I just want to ask you briefly some questions on what you saw in Scott Peterson and what you see to this day. You also were a part of the Klan and got to see and visit with Scott, right? Beckton. Of course. Harris. You seen him both as a child and as an adult? Beckton. Yes. Harris. How much younger are you than Scott? Beckton. I'm about 8 years younger. I'm the same age as Rachel, so we're both 8 years younger. Harris. Would you characterize him as being generous as both a child and an adult? Beckton. Absolutely. Scott's definitely the kind of person that's, although quiet and maybe, in the center of the room, not in the center of the room, yelling and screaming and, causing commotion. It's easy to go over and talk to him. Harris. What do you mean by that? It's easy to go talk to him. Beckton. He's very engaging. Once even though, because he's quiet, just like my Uncle Lee is quiet too, and it may be misinterpreted as standoffish or arrogance. Once you do go over there and just one or two words and they're completely engaged, they're reciprocating. And it's just kind of like the rest of the room melts away because they're definitely paying attention to you and just very engaged in that way. And it's a very sincere thing. Harris. You mentioned a sparkle in his eye when you met him. Did he have that kind of personality that he sort of kept you, I guess the best word, kept you sort of engaged, kept you interested? Beckton. Definitely. Because, he's quite a bit older than me. So, of course, I was kind of half intimidated and half, looking up to him as being an older cousin. And he's definitely the kind of person that I felt like I could trust, or he was a very gentle person, could always go to him, could always feel safe around him. He was not the type, even though in our family, as in most families, there's always the teasing and giving each other a hard time, but Scott's nature is so gentle and sweet and kind. Harris. The phrase you used with me was generosity of spirit. That's a phrase I haven't heard before. What do you mean by that? Generosity of spirit. Beckton. I think he's really demonstrated, and a lot of people, I think, have said this, that he's truly generous because he's humble with his generosity. He is generous with his time. He's generous with his behavior and his just speaking with you, hanging out with you, whatever it is, even just taking somebody to church or whatever those things are. And he does it in a way that's not for recognition. He does it just because, it'll make somebody else feel happy. Despite the fact that he's quiet, he's definitely the kind of person, if somebody's more quiet than he is, or maybe like feeling down or whatever, I can definitely see him going over to that person. And despite the fact that he's quiet, pulling that person out of their shell. Harris. Has he had a positive impact on your life? Beckton. Definitely. Harris. In what way? Beckton. He's definitely a good role model. Him being 8 years older, like I said, I looked up to him, playing with him. He was always really sweet and had that same sweetness that my Aunt Jackie and Uncle Lee both have. Harris. Would this have an effect on you if he is put to death? Beckton. Absolutely. Harris. In what way would it affect you? Beckton. It would be death for our family. Harris. Thank you, Miss Beckton. That's all I have. All right, y'all. Continuing, right? Again, what the fuck? I don't get it. And just been convicted murdering your wife and unborn baby. But you could bring people out of their shell. Whatever. All right. So now we're going to William Archer, who is Scott's friend and college roommate. You can imagine what Mr. Archer has to say. And it's still December the 6th, and it's Pat Harris. Good afternoon, Bill. The relationship you have with Scott Peterson is one of a friend. Is that correct? Archer. Yes, sir. It was. Yes, it is. Harris. To give a little background on who you are, could you tell us, where did you go to college? Archer. I went to college at Cal Poly, San Luis Obispo. Harris. In what years were you there? Archer. I was a student starting in the fall of 87 and graduating in 92. Harris. You were a scholarship basketball player? Archer. I was a scholarship basketball player there and a math major. Harris. And did you stay in San Luis Obispo after that? Archer. Yeah, I did. I wanted to stay in the area, as many students who go to school in that area did. Harris. How long did you stay there? Archer. I stayed there after I graduated from 92 until 1997. Harris. Do you now live in the Bay Area here? Archer. No, I live in the Bay Area. I've been living in San Jose for the past 7 years, since 1997. Now I live out in East Bay in Danville. Judge. Mr. Archer, could you move up a little bit? Archer. Yes, Judge. And I think here. Harris. Bill, what do you do for a living? Archer. I'm a financial manager for a high-tech firm. Harris. Now, are you married? Archer. I'm married to my wife, Carrie, who I met in San Luis Obispo. Harris. And do you have children? Archer. We have 2 children, one age 3, one 5 months old, and, Cameron and Emma. Harris. Now, when you met Scott Peterson, you met him in San Luis Obispo. Is that correct? Archer. I met him in San Luis Obispo, but specifically in Morro Bay, when we were both working at the Morro Bay golf course. Harris. Had you already graduated from college at the time when you met him? Archer. I graduated from college and was working part-time jobs in the area to try and stay in the area. Harris. And the job you were working Morro Bay, what were you doing there? Archer. I was a clerk in the Morro Bay Pro Shop, clerk or assistant within the Morro Bay Golf Course Pro Shop. Harris. What did your job entail? What were you required to do? Archer. My job entailed selling merchandise, along with when customers would come in to pay for the green fees to play golf. I would charge them and run out a card to them as well. Work with them, work with the starter in terms of getting them out on the course. Harris. You came to know Scott Peterson because he worked there? Archer. Yep, he worked at Harris. What was his job at the golf course? Archer. He was a starter that you would work with to make sure that people were getting out on the golf course who wanted to play. Harris. How was it if he worked outside and you were working inside? How did you two interact? Archer. We interacted by intercom a lot from the start because the starter sat in the shack by the first tee and we were in the pro shop. So some of the communications to start off with was via intercom, talking back and forth. Harris. Later on, after you struck up a friendship, did you end up living together? Archer. Yep. So specifically the amount of time, the period of time, we both needed roommates and thought it'd be good for us to live together. Harris. And you lived together, it was over a year, is that right? Archer. It was over a year, yes. Harris. You actually lived in 2 different locations with Scott? Archer. Yeah. So the first location was there were 3 of us that lived there. Scott and myself and another. I guess it was a 3-bedroom house, but it was pretty tight in that, so we were pretty close. Harris. And then later you moved, 2 of you moved into another location? Archer. Yeah, I'm sorry. The 2 of us moved to another location, and the lease was up on the house we were in. Our other roommate was moving on, and we moved into a house with my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife. Harris. The job that Scott did as a starter at the golf course, what time did it require him to be there? Archer. It would require him to start work at about 5:30 a.m. Harris. And did he work that job pretty much every day? Archer. It was not every day, but a number of days during the week, yeah. Harris. As you came to know him, did you also find he was working other jobs? Archer. Yeah, that he was working as a waiter at 2 restaurants within Morro Bay, and he was also working in his dad's crating business, doing shipping and crating. Harris. You mentioned to me, oftentimes work-wise, he would arrive home about 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock at night from work. Is that the memory you have? Archer. Yep. If he worked a full day, I mean, you'd have the starter roll at 5:30 in the morning, or then balancing with the various restaurant rolls. And then at times, he would go back and be doing some of the crating late at night. Harris. Did he have a pretty crazy schedule? Archer. Yeah, he did. No doubt. Harris. We talked a little bit about his job as a starter and what you saw. How did he interact with people at the golf course? Archer. He was very personable, knew people by name, was very friendly, and I would go in and he was good at diffusing situations at the golf course and worked well with both the customers and the rest of the team that worked at the golf course. Harris. What do you mean by diffusing situations? What kind of things? Archer. You know, we worked at a very busy golf course, and we had, we were often running behind in terms of people getting out to play. And Scott was good at first, listening to customers' complaints and then helping them work through it and resolving it as quickly as it possibly could. Harris. As you grew to know him, both as a coworker and as a roommate, did you develop a friendship? Archer. Yep. Harris. What did you like about him as a friend? What was attractive about him as a friend? Archer. Scott was a good friend to have. He would listen to you, and he would quite often go out of his way for you in various small ways. Harris. What do you mean? Archer. Scott, we were both working a variety of part-time jobs at that time, and he'd go out of his way still to, if I was working in the golf course and he knew potentially that I didn't have a chance to grab lunch, he would bring lunch in. He would call and let us know where he's working at the restaurant. He would say, you want to come down here and hang out and sit and have a soda and leftover fries? He was a guy who thought about what was going on in your life and listened to you. Harris. Would you describe him as selfless? Archer. I would. Part of it is, I think back, I probably didn't return the favors as many times as he provided favors, those little favors. Harris. Tell me, it was never one grandiose thing, always a thousand little things? Archer. And that's accurate. Over the past couple of years, you would do a lot of thinking about your friend and some of the things you do and with him. And people ask you to describe him. And it's just the little things that you can describe that there is, some people, maybe as a friend doing big grandiose things. Some people are just this every day and are always thoughtful. Scott was that guy. This April, we're celebrating Earth Month, and it's the perfect time to think about the choices we make every day, especially the ones we don't always think about, like where we sleep. If there's one thing I've learned, it's the quality is sustainability. When you invest in something well made, it lasts longer, and that means less waste, fewer replacements, and a bigger impact on protecting our planet. That's why I love Avocado Green Mattress. Avocado makes certified organic mattresses, crafted with non-toxic materials in their very own zero waste factory. They've already diverted 85% of their waste from landfills, and they're aiming for 90%. It's not just about comfort. It's about caring for the planet with every choice we make. And here's something I really love. Avocado is a proud member of the 1% for the planet. That means at least 1% of every dollar they earn goes straight to environmental nonprofits tackling climate change and protecting ecosystems. So when you choose Avocado, you're not just sleeping better, you're giving back. If you're thinking about upgrading your mattress, do it with purpose. Choose one that's better for you and better for the planet. Head to avocadomattress.com today and save up to 10% on certified organic mattresses. Dream of better for you and the planet. Women, have you ever had one of those days where everything just feels off? Like you're stuck in the middle of a mystery and you can't solve it? Your energy's crashing, your mood's swinging like a suspect in an interrogation room, and no matter what you do, nothing adds up. Well, Cindy has been there, and sometimes the real culprit is hiding in the shadows, is hormonal imbalance. Here's a twist. More than 1,000 hormone disruptors are living rent-free in our world, lurking in our food, our air, even our skincare. And when hormones go haywire, it can feel like you're trapped in your own personal true crime story, especially during premenopause or menopause. But here's the good news. This is the one case you can crack with Hormone Harmony by Happy Mammoth. All you need to do is take their free 2-minute quiz. You'll answer a few simple questions. Just like that, you'll get a personalized recommendation to help bring your hormones back into balance. No long investigation required. What I love is that Hormone Harmony is made with adaptogens, natural science-backed herbal extracts that help your body adapt to stress and hormonal changes, whether it's PMS, hot flashes, brain fog, or sleepless nights. This product is designed to help you feel like you again. Over 40,000 glowing reviews don't lie, and neither do the results. 86% of women say they started losing weight. 77% say their mood improved. And the biggest win, 100% say they feel like themselves again. For a limited time, you can get 15% off your entire first order at happymammoth.com. Just use the code RLRC at checkout. That's happymammoth.com, code RLRC for 15% off today. Harris. Always thoughtful. Archer. Yeah. Harris. At one point, you were living, when you were living with your girlfriend that is now your wife, you broke up for a short period of time. Archer. Yeah, well, while shortly after Scott and I moved into the house that my girlfriend was living in, and that we ended up not being as good as roommates as we were boyfriend and girlfriend. And I moved out, and we split up for a period of time. Yeah. Harris. Tell me, he helped you through that? How did he do that? Archer. Scott would call. He was still living in the house, and he would call and he'd see how I was doing. And I can remember one night shooting pool, and it was him just asking questions of how I was doing. And he knew what I was struggling with, breaking up with my girlfriend. Harris. So he was there for you? Archer. Yes. Harris. Did you ever, I know you worked a lot of part-time jobs yourself. Did you ever go help him at the Creighton Company? Archer. Yeah. He invited me a couple times to help him out with the Creighton Company. I think it was more because, he knew I was cash strapped. Harris. What kind of tasks were involved with the Creighton Company? What kind of things was he doing? Archer. It was nailing into wood. It was putting frames together, crates. It was, simple building boxes. Harris. Did you have a chance to see him interact with his father at all? Archer. Yeah, I did. Quite a bit. Harris. What was that like? Archer. I would describe them as a good father-son relationship. A lot of where I would see them together was around the golf course. They kind of palled around some, and that, it was good. Genuine father-son relationship. Harris. There was a time, I believe, that you talked about he had a motorcycle wreck, and he struck you as how he was able to handle that, kind of laughing himself. Would you just tell that story? Archer. And Scott, at one point in time, I think he started going back to school at this point in time, and he was riding a motorcycle, and he laid it down on the side and had a pretty rough accident and came home. And, was pretty scraped up. But at the same time, he kind of just laughed at himself and said, well, I shouldn't have been going quite so fast on a gravelly road. And, he just didn't complain. He just kind of laughed. Harris. Did you say that in general, Scott had a positive impact on your life? Archer. I would. Scott treated people with a lot of respect and was positive with those people that were around him. He treated people extremely well and was friendly from the start. And some of that rubs off on you. As to there are situations where you should probably, when I would see him, I should probably treat people a little better as well. Harris. When you got the phone call from us asking you to testify, you agreed immediately, although you hadn't actually spent a lot of time with him since college. Why? Archer. This is an awful situation, and I can't imagine what's going on with the families and how hard it would be. And I can't put myself in a comparative situation. I just know that if I called him and, he would agree to in a heartbeat to. Harris. How would you feel about Scott being given the death penalty? Archer. It would hurt. It would hurt. Harris. You know him from your time together spent with him. Do you feel like if he's allowed to live, that he could have... Go ahead, take your time. Archer. Yeah, I was going to ask you to repeat that. Judge. There's some Kleenex. There's a box of Kleenex there. That's why it's there. Archer. I didn't see it before. Harris. Given you what you know about him, you and your relationship with him, do you feel that if given the opportunity to live, he could have a positive impact in prison? Archer. Yeah, I do. Scott, in the time I spent with him, which was, a period of time ago, he made the very best of every situation he was in. Harris. That's all I have. Y'all, come on, man. What the fuck? We were college roommates for a year and a half. He treated people nice. He could defuse situations off the golf course. Wish he'd have defused it before he killed his wife and unborn baby, right? Whatever. Now, believe it or not, the little bit you got out of that, I'm not call the guy an idiot, but out of that testimony, they're actually going to get the testimony from his wife, who was a roommate for a short period of time. And her name is Carrie Archer. December 6, 2004. Pat Harris. Good afternoon, Carrie. We just met Bill Archer. That is your husband? Carrie. Yes, it is. Harris. We heard him talk about the fact that you met in college, met in San Luis Obispo. Were you in school there? Carrie. Yes, I was. Harris. What were you majoring in? Carrie. Physical education and kinesiology. Harris. And what have you done with basically your career at this point? Carrie. I now manage a number of corporate fitness facilities for a high-tech company. Harris. My understanding of the living arrangements here at one point is that Scott and Bill moved in together, and at that point, were you dating Bill? Carrie. Yes, I was. Harris. What was your first opportunity to get to know and meet Scott? Carrie. Yes, it was the first time. Harris. And after time period, Bill moved into your house and Scott did as well. Carrie. Correct. Harris. Is that a fair assessment of how? Carrie. Fair, yes. Harris. And at some point, Bill moved out briefly and Scott stayed. Carrie. Correct. Harris. Then Bill moved back? Carrie. Well, Harris. Did you guys move out? Carrie. Eventually we moved out. I'm sorry. Scott and Lacey eventually moved out. A couple of months later, while I maintained the residence at the initial home. Harris. So try to get these living arrangements right after Scott and Bill moved into your house. Carrie. Yes. Harris. Eventually, shortly thereafter, Lacey moved in with Scott. Carrie. Correct. Harris. So that was short overall. Carrie. Yes, correct. Harris. Okay. When you met Scott for the first time, he was now starting to be Bill's roommate. What is your first sort of impressions of Scott? Carrie. Scott was definitely a very personable, friendly guy. Very easy to talk to. You just immediately, I think, felt comfortable in front of him and speaking with him in the very beginning, just friendly from the very beginning. Always asking questions about me initially. And then again, also that was consistent throughout, but always concerned with others, but wanting to know a little bit more about me. We fell very easy into conversation. Harris. Did he seem genuine to you? Archer. Definitely. Very genuine. I think Bill said it accurately, and that, it's hard to just say in general, people ask you about him. Just a friendly, great guy. Would do anything for anyone type of guy. I couldn't say enough about him. Harris. Did you at some point get to see how he actually worked at work habits? Carrie. In general, Scott was always very busy, going to school, and holding down multiple jobs. So he was in and out of the house. Just the reason he was out most of the time, because he was working or going to school. Very busy. Busy schedule. Harris. Did he still have time for his friends? Carrie. Definitely. I definitely can mainly speak for his relationship with my husband, Bill, at the time. Playing golf and shooting pool. Those sort of things. But definitely he had a busy schedule, but he somehow made room for those sort of things. Harris. Did you consider him trustworthy? Carrie. Yeah, Scott was, as I mentioned, very easy to talk to, but he was someone I quickly felt I could call a friend. Very trustworthy. I knew Scott for, I would say, approximately a year while he lived with my husband, Bill. And again, at that point is when we had an opening in room. The lease went up. I would have never asked someone to move over my room in my house to someone I didn't trust. Definitely very trustworthy. I had other roommates at the time, So I definitely would want to have someone that was trustworthy and worthy of that spot. Harris. Did you feel comfortable around him? Carrie. Yeah, very comfortable. Harris. At some point, he brought Lacey into the house, right? Carrie. Correct. Harris. And how did that arrangement work? Carrie. We were in a tight room at one point. Bill had moved out by that time, and they had Lacey and Scott moved into one of our spare rooms. It worked out well. She was going to school at the time. He was going to school. And everybody in the house was pretty busy at the time. But, they would come and go. And they had a great relationship. I'm sorry, do you want me to be more specific? Harris. I was going to ask you, you observed the relationship, especially there in San Luis Obispo? Carrie. Yeah. Harris. What did you observe? Carrie. Relationship? They were always very close. I had mentioned not here, but there was a time where Scott was so busy, honestly, didn't remember him dating a whole lot. He was too busy with work and school. But I do remember when he started dating Lacey, very special girl in his life. He would talk about her quite a bit. And when she came to the house, my or other roommate would joke, you don't see couples that are that close that often. They were always together, laughing, just having a great time together. They would plan fun trips together. I remember them joking one time they were going to go away to get married in Mexico, to the point where at one point we thought they were serious. Obviously they didn't. They were very close, very serious at the time, but always so happy around each other. Harris, did you see Scott how he dealt with other people? Carrie, I did. Scott was very respectful of other people, always putting other people first. Always wanted, he was the type of person that if you were to see him, he would generally say, how are you? And a lot of times with some people, when you run into them, they'll ask you the same thing. It's more of a conversation starter. Whereas with him, with Scott, he was genuinely concerned about how are you? What have you been up to? What have you been doing in your life? Those sort of things. And again, that goes back to him being so genuine and such a good friend. He was that type of person that he was very kind and considerate and respectful of his friends, and was the type of person that you want to be a little bit more like, because you felt so good how he made you feel, and being so concerned with your well-being, you know how good that felt, that you wanted to be that way, and you wanted to be able to treat people that way. That's what I observed from him. Harris. So you felt like he had a positive impact? He had a positive impact on your life. Carrie. I do. Again, a lot of it has to do with you treat others as you would like to be treated. And Scott was one of those people that treated you, again, with respect. Very genuine, very caring, do anything for you. Would go out of his way if you asked him a favor, whether it would be more furniture or, pick you up from school out of his way. He would always do that for you. And that type of friend is hard to find sometimes. And when you have someone like that, you realize how good they make you feel. You want to be more like that. You want to become that type of person and be a person for someone like that. And that's what I think of Scott. That's the type of person I think of him to be. Harris. We all know the harsh realities of jail. Do you think he could have an impact even in that kind of environment? Carrie. I do. I don't know what it's like, but I do know Scott. And as Bill has mentioned, He's the type of person that would make any situation best he could in any way. He wrote, find a way to do what he needed to do to make a difference or to make a better situation. But he's a great person, and I think he has a lot to offer. So again, I don't know what it's like to be in a place like that, but I do believe wherever he is, he's going to find what he can to contribute or to be the best person he knows how to be. Harris, how would you feel about him being executed? Carrie, it's obviously something that I never want to think of. I don't want to think about it because to me, I knew Lacey for a short period of time. And every picture you see of her is so accurate. She was so bubbly and friendly. She's just, to lose a person like that I knew, and then to lose her baby, and then to think about losing another great person that I consider Scott to be, it's just beyond imagination. I just can't imagine what it would be like. It doesn't seem right. It doesn't seem fair. And I don't think that, I can't imagine. I just can't go there with that decision. Harris, thank you. That's all I have. Y'all, let's try to get another one so we can get out of this day into Tuesday, December 7th. But the last witness for this day is Julie Galloway. She's the hostess of the Pacific Cafe. And there's a couple pictures, 90-2, which is a red Jeep, and a picture of Scott and Lee. 90-3, Scott at a restaurant with a group, and 90-4, Scott and Mr. and Mrs. Warren. So let's do the testimony. And this is of Julie Galloway. Now, Garagos, our good friend, Mr. Garagos, is back at the mic. Garagos, good afternoon, Miss Galloway. Galloway, good afternoon. Garagos, you met Scott in 1992. Is that correct? Galloway, correct. Garagos, and at the time, you were a hostess at the Pacific Cafe. The jury heard a place called Abbas. Galloway, correct. Garagos, what do you do now? Galloway, I'm a partner with my brother in a company called Central Coast Coffee in the San Luis Obispo area. Garagos, you're married now? Galloway, correct. Garagos, when you met Scott, you were single, I take it? Single, not married? Galloway, correct. Yes. Garagos, and when you met him, was it at the cafe itself? Galloway, yes. Garagos, and was that you had been working there for, when I talked to you, for a number of years before that? Galloway, that's correct. Garagos, do you remember meeting Scott for the first time? Galloway, yeah, I was working and he came there. He'd come there for his first shift for that night, and I was a hostess. And I'd been working there for many, many years before Scott had come in. And I remember him coming in his, crisp white shirt and his tie, and he walked in and very eager and very willing to work.
This weekend, only at Macy's, it's our lowest prices of spring. How low? Diamond rings, pendants, and earrings, only $399, originally $1,500. Ninja blenders, now $89.99. And $395 men's designer suits, only $99.99. So if you're wondering why you should shop Macy's lowest prices sale, well, the name pretty much says it all. It's our lowest prices for one weekend only. Starts tomorrow at Macy's. Savings off already reduced prices. Exclusions apply.
Garagos, what was his job? You say his first shift, was that as a waiter? Galloway, a waiter, attired as a waiter. Garagos, so the jury understands, how big of a place is this Pacific Cafe? Galloway, maybe 500 square feet, 600 square feet. Garagos, Seats how many people? Galloway. 28. Gary goes. And I guess the number of employees that you would have are not a whole bunch, right? Galloway. No, we had 2 waiters on duty and a hostess on duty. Gary goes. And is it fair to say that you two work in a pretty kind of close environment and become either friendly or not so friendly pretty quick? Galloway. Yeah. Gary goes. I take it you wouldn't be here today unless you became friendly? Galloway. Yes, that's correct. Gary goes. Would you consider yourself a pretty close friend? Galloway. Yeah. Gary goes. Did you guys become close friends? Galloway. Yes. Gary goes. Was that, you were not involved sexually or intimately or anything like that? Galloway. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Gary goes. I've got a picture, I think, of what looks like Ava's. Is this there? Galloway. Yes, that's the restaurant. Gary goes. There's 2. I've actually got 3 pictures, Judge, that I'd like to mark. Gary goes. When you were working together there, you said you would be called friends. Could you describe that relationship? Galloway. I would consider Scott at that time my best male friend that I had. Gary goes. Okay. Would you confide in him? Galloway. Yeah. I told Scott things that I probably would have not told any female girlfriend. It was just so easy to tell Scott things. Gary goes. Did he have, at least initially, a positive impact on you in terms of a relationship that you were involved in then? Galloway. Yeah, I was dating somebody at the time to where I was just absolutely not happy at all, and confided in Scott. And it was, he was just better. I talked with him through it, and he helped me make some proper decisions and better choices. Gary goes. Did you learn things from him? Galloway. A lot of things, especially seeing how his relationship was with Lee and Jackie, and see how he was and how he interacted with them at the time, to where I met Scott at the Pacific Cafe. I was having a lot of troubles with my mom at the time. We weren't speaking. My mother and I didn't speak for a lot of years when I moved out on my own. To see him and how he interacted with his mom and how they showed love for one another, it helped me a lot. We talked about that a lot. And I got to know the Petersons very well. Just see how much Scott loved Jackie. It's just absolutely amazing. Gary goes. You and I talked about this. One of the things that inspired you to have a better relationship, or to kind of rehabilitate the relationship you had with your own mother. Galloway. 100%. It made me work through everything, all of my issues. Gary goes. Also, we talked about that relationship that you were in that you did not feel, when you didn't feel it was productive, I guess, or abusive, or whatever you wanted to characterize it as. He helped you to get out of that relationship. Is that right? Galloway. Correct. Gary goes. Has he also helped you get into a different relationship, didn't he? Galloway. Correct. Gary goes. That's with a gentleman who is sitting in the courtroom who is your husband? Galloway. Correct. Gary goes. Tell the jury about that. Galloway. Yeah, Scott. My current husband and Scott worked together at the Moore Bay Golf Course. And after I worked through my issues with my boyfriend, it was a year between the time, and I finished my relationship with Scott, and I finished my relationship and had some time to myself and worked through all my issues. Scott said, I think I have somebody that I could possibly, be perfect for you. And Scott set us up for a date. Gary goes, would he do things to encourage you in that relationship? Galloway. Yeah, he would. I mean, there used to be a flower lady that would come through the restaurant, and she would go through every single restaurant in Morro Bay, selling flowers to everybody. And Scott would say that the flowers were for my husband or my boyfriend at the time or future boyfriend at the time to encourage me to go out on dates with him. Gary goes, you told me that he had a Jeep that he had, and I think I got this marked as D90-2. Is that the Jeep that he had at the time? Galloway. Yeah. Scott bought a used Jeep. Gary goes, and did you have either a need or a liking for this particular automobile? Galloway. Yeah. Scott gave me unlimited access to that. Whenever I want it, I have an absolute love for Jeeps. Gary goes, doing that, would that cause him any problems? Galloway. Yeah, it would leave him without a car. Gary goes, would he do that more than one occasion? Galloway. Yeah, very much so. Gary goes, how would you describe him in terms of whether or not he was giving or generous? Those were words you would use about him? Galloway. I would use, he was the most generous. Yes, he was the most generous man I ever met, ever. Gary goes, do you have any examples of that stick out in your mind as you sit here today? Told me a story about going to an art gallery with him one time. Galloway. Scott and I used to go, we would spend time together, and we actually had time in between his 3 jobs and my 3 jobs, and us both going to college at the time. When we would make our little expeditions, Scott would, we used to love to go to art galleries just for fun, or do any little fun thing that we had time to do together. We would go to art galleries. We both loved one in particular, art gallery in Cambria. We would just go there and look for fun. And I would say I love something as little as a candle. And somehow he snuck it, bought it when I was turned around. And the next day it was on my doorstep. A note that says, thanks. Thanks for being my friend. Gary goes, do you ever act inappropriate with you? Gary, no, never. Gary goes, come on to you sexually or anything like that? Galloway, no, never. Gary goes, the friendship that you had with him, it extended also to the family at a certain point, as you indicated. Is that right? Galloway, yes. Gary goes, did you observe how he and his father would get along, how they interacted? Galloway, yeah. It was wonderful how they interact, how they joke, and how they play with one another, and how they go camping and fishing. And they're not like father and son. I think they're more like brothers. Gary goes, I put on the screen there a picture. That's a picture of the restaurant. Is that correct? Galloway, yes, that's correct. Gary goes, was he a hard-working waiter when he was there? He would go out of his way. Galloway, yeah. Sometimes he had to cover the whole entire floor by himself. Again, that's 28 people at one time. And you have to spread yourself. That's a lot of people at one time wanting food. Gary goes, how did he interact with the customers? Galloway, he always greets. Some people came in on his nights when they knew he was working just to see him. They know that he was working on those nights, and I don't think I had any people that came on nights that I was working. Gary goes, would that be something that, why would customers want to have him as their waiter? Galloway, just the way Scott interacted with those people, the way he cared about them as people, the way he genuinely cared about them, cared about their family, cared about their children, cared about grandparents if they came with elderly people. Gary goes, D90-4, do you recognize those two? Galloway, yes. Gary goes, Who are they? Galloway. They are Mr. and Mrs. Warren. They are people that used to come in the restaurant all the time. Gary goes, and specifically asked for Scott? Galloway. Yes, 100%. Gary goes, how long did you two work together at the restaurant? Galloway. From 1992 to 1996. Gary goes, was he somebody who you could count on that would always be at work early? Galloway. 100%. We weren't scheduled to work until 4:30, but he showed up every single time of the shift. He was scheduled to work at 4 p.m. Gary goes, and what was his demeanor like? Galloway. Always walked in ready to work. Never walked in late. Never had an excuse. Showed up on time, ready to go to work. Gary goes, were you familiar with other jobs he was working at the time? Galloway. I know he was working at the golf course early in the morning at the starter shack, and then also working with his father at the crate company in St. Louis. Gary goes, also going to college at the time, at the same time as you were. Galloway. That's correct. Gary goes, were you aware whether or not he was the one who was working himself through school? Galloway. Yes. Gary goes, how did you know that? Galloway. Because that's the one thing we both had in common. We wanted to, both of us wanted to make sure that we were putting ourselves through school. Both of us had parents willing to put us through school, but I guess we were kind of stubborn and we wanted to do it ourselves. We could have had them pay for everything, but we wanted to do it for ourselves. We were paying for our own rents, paying our own colleges, paying it everything we needed to survive. We wanted to do it ourselves. Gary goes, did you ever see Scott violent in any way? Galloway. No, absolutely not. Gary goes, did you ever see him lose his temper, get into arguments? Galloway. No, never. Gary goes, you told me yesterday that when he would work on, sometimes you consider yourself to have somewhat of a short fuse. Is that right? Galloway. Yes, very much so. Gary goes, and I assume, having worked in a restaurant myself, if you tell people their table is going to be ready in 20 minutes and it's been 40 minutes, people are generally not going to be happy with you. Galloway. Yes. Gary goes, and you would have that experience on occasion? Galloway. Yes, very much so. Gary goes, and you were telling me what would happen some of those instances with Scott. Can you tell the jury that? Galloway. Yes, typical Friday, Saturday night. We were very busy. We were a real hot restaurant where we were working there in the early 90s. And we overbooked ourselves like every other restaurant would. And the hostess, since it's my responsibility to set people down at certain times, a lot of times it didn't happen. And people come at me and, where's my table? Start overreacting. And I didn't handle it too well. When Scott knew right away, he could see that I got to a certain point and was ready to, fight back or bite back. He would, whenever he was in the restaurant, he would come right over and take right over and say, Julie, this table needs you. And he would come over and handle the situation, take the people outside. Gary goes, told me about another continuing kind of issue with another waiter. Their name's Sean. Galloway. Yes, 100%. Gary goes, were those things important to you? Galloway. Yes. Gary goes, what did they tell you about or show you about Scott? Galloway. He was able to mediate and able to handle situations before they got out of control. Gary goes, in the time you knew him, did you know him to be somebody who would wear his emotions on his sleeve, so to speak? Galloway. Absolutely not. Never once. Never. There it goes. Did he appear to you in the years that you knew him there? And you two, were you considered him your best friend? Galloway. 100% yes. There it goes. Okay. Galloway. Very proudly, I would say he was my best friend. There it goes. When you would be with him and do things with him, did you get the sense that he was caring about you or caring about you, what you wanted or your thoughts? Galloway. That's always how it was. Very much so. I was just not anyone that he knew. Anyone he knew was always first. And it was never about Scott. Scott never came up. It was never ever about Scott. Hi, how are you? And that was the ends of the conversations about Scott. It went right to, he was so caring about you, the other person. It was never turned around about him. Here goes. Now, you obviously know why we're here. I assume you have followed the case and know that he's been convicted and that this jury's task now is to decide whether to impose the death penalty and kill him or let him survive the rest of whatever years he's got in prison with no chance of parole. What is your opinion about that choice that this jury has to face? Galloway. My opinion? Here it goes. I assume, am I correct, that you do not want him to be put to death? Galloway. No, absolutely not. No. Here it goes. Tell me why. Galloway. Because I absolutely. Here it goes. I know when I talked to you yesterday that you were extremely emotional about this. And I'm not trying to pick at that or anything else. Is it a fair way to represent your feelings that you think it would be a tremendous waste for him to be put to death? Galloway. Yes. Scott has great things left to do. Here it goes. Even locked in a cage somewhere for the rest of his life? Galloway. Yes. Here it goes. Thank you. I have no further questions. All right, y'all, that's it. We actually completed that day of testimony. So we have 2 days left. Wow. And then the defense will actually rest. So hang in there, probably 2 more episodes, maybe 1. And I love and appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you for liking and listening and sharing. Hey, go get your tickets for me live on stage Saturday, July the 19th at Southeastern Louisiana University in Hammond, Louisiana, taking a stage in the Student Union Theater. And it's a big concert hall, y'all. And we got general admission tickets on sale for $50 and the VIP experience is $100. And that gets you early seating and the, party afterwards and where the first drink's on me and shuttle service and the cops and all that good stuff. It's going to be a great time. It will be an original old school Woody Overton raw and unscripted story. Looking forward to seeing you all there. Hashtag Justice for Haley. Please keep calling in. It's working. We got the DAs reached out. We got news media, interviews being done, but this is not the time to let up. Keep the pressure on. So they will follow through and do what they said they're going to do. And I got to get out of here. But LOPA, Louisiana Organ Procurement Agency, it's my jam. And this past Tuesday night, I got to guest I guess they call it guest bartending, celebrity bartending, whatever, with Kevin Kool-Aid Garrick. And we rocked it. And it was an awesome time. And all the tips went to LOPA. And I'll get y'all that amount as soon as I have it. So that's it. Be a organ donor, sign up, give the gift of life. You don't have to be a lifer from Louisiana. You could be a lifer from Kentucky. Go to lopa.org, take 2 minutes, fill out the questionnaire and become a hero. And I'm Woody Overton, your host of Real Life, Real Crime, the podcast. And until next time or ever, don't let me catch you down on Murder Bayou. Peace. Peace.
You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have a right to an attorney prior to and during any question. If you can't afford one, the court will appoint one for you. Do you understand your rights?
When the wolf is at your door, your running's over, that's for sure. He already knows all about you. Cut you down, no matter by you. Now you better walk the
At Arizona State University, we're bringing world-class education from our globally acclaimed faculty to you. Ranked #1 in innovation for 10 consecutive years and #2 among public universities for employability, ASU isn't just ahead of the curve, it's creating new paths to success. Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online, that's a degree better. Explore more than 300 undergraduate, graduate, and certificate programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
This weekend, only at Macy's, it's our lowest prices of spring. How low? Diamond rings, pendants, and earrings, only $399, originally $1,500. Ninja blenders, now $89.99. And $395 men's designer suits, only $99.99. So if you're wondering why you should shop Macy's lowest prices sale, well, the name pretty much says it all. It's our lowest prices for one weekend only. Starts tomorrow at Macy's. Savings off already reduced prices. Exclusions apply.